Community Conversation Series. We are so happy you're able to join us again today. Today, I think we're covering probably one of the most relevant topics that faces our generation as well as the younger generation, and that is digital abuse. Now, we couldn't be any more excited than we are to welcome our expert panelist, Adam Dodge. He will be here today sharing his expertise. I'm going to give you just a brief background, and I do mean brief because his resume is extensive, but let me go ahead and share a little bit about him. As the founder of EndTAB.org, which is Ending Technology-Enabled Abuse, Adam's work is characterized by his dedication to addressing the existing and future threats posed by technology to victims of crime and gender-based violence. He has written extensively on technology-enabled abuse, non-consensual pornography, co-authored a domestic violence advisory on the emerging threat of deep fakes, and created the first resource guide for victims of non-consensual deep fake pornography. Adam spends a great deal of his time delivering innovative technology-enabled abuse trainings to victim-serving organizations and government agencies around the world. However, he is best known by us as being the former legal and technology executive for Laura's House. So welcome back, Adam. We are delighted to have you today.
They always say you can never leave Laura's house. You always get pulled back in.
You got that right.
Super happy to be here. Super happy to be here.
Well, you're a member of the Laura's House family forever.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you for joining us.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Can you go ahead and share your screen if you'd like? Are you going to be sharing a screen or do you just want to talk?
No, I think I'm just going to chat.
Awesome. Okay, we will do that then. So as you know, I'm just going to be pinging some questions to you to pong back at me. And let's go ahead and get started just kind of on that 101, and that is, what is technology-enabled abuse?
Yeah, just a really quick background. You know, while I was at Laura's House, our legal department processed thousands of domestic violence restraining orders. And one thing that kept coming up with greater regularity to the point where it was almost ubiquitous is the ways in which people that cause harm in intimate partner violence relationships use technology as a weapon or misuse technology as a weapon. So some folks will call it technology abuse. Some folks call it technology facilitated abuse. I call it technology enabled abuse or technology enabled domestic violence. And there's no great mystery here. It simply refers to the ways in which familiar forms of abuse, like power and control, harassment, threats, are perpetrated online or via technology. So before we had stalking, now we have cyber stalking. Before we had harassment, now we have online harassment. Bullying is now cyber bullying. And I'll give you an example of how the sort of the role that technology plays in familiar forms of abuse. You know, when I do these trainings, and I've written a lot about this subject, is sort of the online sexual abuse in the form of image-based abuse or revenge porn, as it's more well known. And everybody knows what revenge porn is now. I seldom go into a training where people don't know what I'm talking about. But the only reason that folks know, and I think they know it because 1 in 12 Americans identifies as a victim of revenge porn now. And revenge porn is a bit of a misnomer because the motivation isn't always revenge, but so we're all on the same page, you know, it's the sharing of an intimate image without the victim's consent of a photo where there was an expectation that the photo would remain private. And everybody knows what this is now. It's sort of an epidemic with 1 in 12 folks being affected. But why is that? The reason is technology, because I would argue that since the first camera became commercially available in 1830 or the 1830s, I could have committed an act of, let's call it revenge porn, against my partner by taking a photo of my naked partner and then sharing that photo without their consent. But now, because of technology, because of digital cameras and smartphones and the internet and social media, it has really supercharged the ways in which you can misuse technology to perpetrate familiar forms of abuse. So now In 1830, if I shared that photo, the order of magnitude of the harm to the victim was limited to who I could physically hand that photo to. Now, today, I can take a photo or a video with my smartphone and share it with the world in 3 seconds. And you can never scrub the internet of that photo. That photo is going to live on forever. So that I feel like that example really distills what technology-enabled abuse is, and how how we can sort of look through that lens as to how folks are repeated, will always continue to misuse new and existing forms of technology to perpetrate familiar forms of abuse.
Okay, and as it pertains to intimate partner violence, so we're talking about intimate partners beyond the pornography, so whether it's revenge porn or just disseminating illicit pictures, what other use of technology could a potentially harmful partner do to another partner using technology?
You mean like how has it changed the dynamics of intimate partner violence?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I would say it's changed it in two ways. So one is tech-enabled domestic violence is easier to commit, right? So for example, if I wanted to monitor or follow my partner before smartphones, I would have to physically follow them. And that required a greater degree of effort on my part. Now, if I have access to their iCloud account or their Google account or family sharing or Find My Friends or any kind of have access to any location-based apps on my partner's phone, whether that be a rideshare app or a food delivery app or something like that, I can now track their location from my couch. So it's much easier to commit, and it's very, tech-enabled DV is very accessible now because almost everybody has a smartphone. Before the pandemic, the Pew Research Center found that 94% of Americans between the ages of 18 and 49 own a smartphone. I think that number is much higher now, during the pandemic. And so it's much easier to commit these forms of abuse. Everybody's got this technology, and everybody relies on this technology to function in society today. So you can be rest assured that if you want to engage in power and control or take some kind of harmful action against your partner, doing it via technology is a useful avenue for folks because everybody's using it. And as we know, victims are harmed where they are, and where they are, especially now during the pandemic, they're online and on their devices. The other point that I would make, the way it's sort of changed the dynamics of intimate partner violence, is that the harm is often greater, right? So to take that example of if I wanted to post an intimate photo or private information or say negative things about my partner, it's very public. It's far reaching. I can reach that person wherever they are in the world. It's perpetual. Once I post that information or do something online, it lives online forever, and it can continue to, for example, a nude photograph can live online and continue to harm that victim, especially when anybody discovers that photo and decides to reshare it or something like that. And in that way, it's also perpetual. It's abuse that carries on. So, a lot of folks will say, well, online abuse, you're harming somebody's digital persona. It's not as big of a deal as if, they get harmed in real life. And I really have to beg to differ. I'm not here to say online abuse is worse or less impactful. I'm just saying it's different, and it's powerfully harmful. And unfortunately, folks tend to think that online abuse is somehow less than. But if you look at things like we have the highest teen suicide rates we've in the history of our country, and that really correlates with the high volume use of technology and the internet and social media and devices and things like that. So it's definitely sort of enhanced domestic violence and intimate partner violence in several ways.
Sure. And, I think an argument maybe could be made that it could be in some ways more harmful, like you said, because if it's physical abuse, emotional, psychological, if that separation can be successfully made, and then the partner, the victim, survivor can separate out, as compared to, like you said, the internet is for ever. So this can actually track with them on Google search as on their social media and going forward, job interviews, if there's any kind of illicit photos that have been uploaded. So yeah, the harm would have to be ongoing, or potentially could be ongoing.
Absolutely. I mean, that our devices and the internet has just created more ways to reach a victim, right?
Right.
And it's not an option to tell a victim, well, why don't you just go offline, or why don't you, close your accounts? That's not, one, that's victim blaming, which we don't do, but two, that's not reasonable, because if you can't access the internet or technology safely, then, I mean, look, at Laura's house, we were in the business of empowering domestic violence survivors to rebuild their lives after abuse, right? You cannot rebuild your life after abuse. You cannot survive and thrive if you can't access technology safely. You needed to go to school, you needed to work, you needed to communicate, to get your information, to get to point A to point B. A million things that I mean, the first thing I do, I don't know about you all on this webinar right now, but the first thing I do in the morning is I get on this. I mean, I am heavily reliant on this. And so are the folks that we're working with that have experienced intimate partner violence as well.
Okay, well, you said in the previous segment that everybody has a smartphone. Pretty much everyone, at least it seems as though, and that includes our kiddos. And so and then you talked about the suicide rate that is at historic highs. So we know there must be an impact. So can you address the harm that is happening to our youth? And then what every parent wants to know is, how can they best protect their kiddos if they have that technology?
Oh, that's a big question. It's a big question, Veronica. I'm going to do my best to answer it. So, yeah, I mean, just the landscape of abuse towards teens. I mean, cyberbullying. 59% of teens report experiencing cyberbullying. That's 6 in 10 of our teens. That is a shockingly high number. And again, just to circle back to the impact that technology has on domestic violence, that it's easier to commit, and the harm is often greater. Same thing is true with cyberbullying. When I was growing up, if somebody got bullied, it began and ended with the school day. When you went home, you weren't targeted anymore. But because we are so accessible now, and because unplugging from the internet is not an option, it means that this hyper-connectivity means that cyberbullying occurs on a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week, 365-day-a-year cycle, right? And that is incredible. I mean, look, the internet was not built for kids, right? It was not built for children. And frankly, I don't even know if it was built for adults, because we haven't been able to get a handle on it either. But when you put a bunch of kids with developing brains on there and give them basic, they're all gas, no break. It's not surprising that the most weaponized, insidious, powerful forms of cyberbullying have manifested and have resulted in higher rates of teen suicide and suicidal ideation. So absolutely, technology plays a role. So, and I'd be remiss, and I know maybe this topic is taboo, maybe it's not, but I'd be remiss in not talking about sort of the sexualization of teen girls through the sharing of nudes and image-based abuse, and women, young teens and girls being sent unsolicited nude photos from boys. Boys are 41% of teen girls report receiving unwanted nude images from boys. And we know that 1 in 4 teens is sexting. And we also know that boys are 4 times more likely to pressure girls to send nudes than girls are to pressure boys. So so that's kind of where we're at right now. And what do we do about that? I think we really need to be having conversations. I'll mention 2 things. One, I think we need to be having conversations about digital safety with our teens and our kids. We're really good about, and I'm going to this will probably come up again, but we're really good about addressing physical safety and emotional safety. But with the amount of time that our kids, and really as adults, that we're spending online, we need to be talking about digital safety. And digital safety, to me, I don't think you're going to get anywhere if you have a conversation with a teen and say, you feel digitally safe. But if you ask them 3 questions that to me define digital safety, I think you can things might come up that could be worth exploring. Number one, can they access technology? Is somebody preventing them from accessing their devices? Is somebody preventing them from getting online? Is somebody preventing them from accessing their accounts? Two, do they have control? Even if they can access those things, do they have control over their device? Or are they in an abusive relationship where they're only allowed to do certain things, or they have to share their login credentials or give access to their accounts to somebody else? Are they able to control their technology, their apps, their devices, et cetera? And even if those first two are met, because you got to meet all three. Third is, can they exist online without fear or limitation? When they go online, are they scared? Are they getting bullied? Are they getting monitored? Are they getting stalked? Is their location being tracked? And so when you have these more, when you're having more actionable conversations opposed to general conversations, you're giving kids an opportunity to answer honestly and are sort of pointing them in the direction of what being digitally safe looks like. The other thing I'll mention is I really believe when it comes to nudes, everybody tends to focus on when the fact that the victim sent the nude, right? We're very focused on that. I think we really need to shift the focus to the pressure. Who is pressuring these kids, mostly teen girls, but these kids to send these nudes? And I think that policies and procedures at high schools, if they punish or hold people accountable for pressuring somebody into sending those nudes, I think we will see a drop off in these things happening, because right now there's no, pressuring somebody to do that. Most likely the focus isn't on them. The focus is, well, why did that victim send it? Oh, she's, and then they bash the victim, but we really need to be focused on. So those are the two things I would recommend: talking about digital safety and taking the focus, when you're talking about image-based abuse, taking the focus off the victim that sent the photo and focus on why they sent the photo and who pressured them to do it.
Sure. And I agree with you. I think the conversation needs to start at the home. I mean, if you're going to give a child this technology, then to begin those conversations and have them be ongoing, and it would be amazing to have the school's partner and bring this conversation into the classroom as well. And then the SRO, school resource officers, to go to the original conversation of who pressured who and what did that look like. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yes.
I have raised 4 children. I have a stepson, have 5. And one of my kids back in the day, I remember her say, just getting a text message and saying, "Oh my gosh." And I was glad I was in the room at the time, but it was a nude photo of someone on the campus where a guy had gotten hold of it and just sent it throughout. And she happened to be on the receiving end of it. I will say at the time, because this was years ago, I didn't know where to begin as a parent, because now my child's on the receiving end of this. And you know what? That generation, they laugh at it. They're like, "Oh my gosh, what a sucker." And all of it that goes along with it. And I was like, oh, the poor parents, the poor girl. I mean, there was just so much to unpack. So if you find out, let's say that your child isn't part of that, but was on the receiving end, and you find out that they're a part of the dissemination, what are some actionable steps that you can take? Because it threw me completely off guard. I had no idea. And I wasn't in this space, but nevertheless, I thought I was pretty savvy, but you could have knocked me over with a feather.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shocking thing, and it's equally shocking for us as adults when the tweens or the teens that are viewing this are sort of nonplussed about it. They're just like, well, they think it's funny, or like I said, they badmouth, what immediately go to victim blaming. Why did she allow that? Why did she send that photo? Why did she allow what she think was going to happen so that's one thing, is talking about victim blaming with if that happens, I think it's safe to assume that if your child is on the receiving end, sees that, a nude photo of a fellow student is being passed around, that victim blaming is going to occur. And I think it's really important that we talk to our kids about victim blaming when it comes to these things, because honestly, that's tantamount saying that, what do you think was going to happen when you allowed that photo to be taken of yourself? is like saying to a rape victim, what do you think was going to happen when you wore that dress or that outfit or went to that bar? So really getting them, because for whatever reason, we're sort of hardwired to victim blame. It's like natural for whatever reason. And so I think we really need to get in early and talk about rewiring that. And then the other thing I think we can talk about is it's to sort of allay the fact or divert from the fact that it's not that serious or not that big of a deal, is really define the harm for folks. Because I spend a lot of my time doing that, because like I mentioned, that photo is going to haunt this kid for the rest of their lives. It could show up in job interviews, it could show up in academic background checks, it can show up in future and mess up their future relationships, it can throw up in their social media. It's going to, that one photo will haunt them for the rest of their lives. And really getting people, especially young folks or teens, to appreciate the order of magnitude of the harm is really important, because I think they just think it's no big deal, but it's a huge deal. And even sharing, stories about kids that have committed suicide because those photos are released. I mean, it is a huge deal. And again, I think this goes to this thought that, well, it happened online, so it's not as big of a deal as if, they were physically harmed or something like that. And we really need to help get everybody out of that mindset.
Yeah, and when you're having those conversations, just parents, you're going to have to like really step up, because I'm going to tell you, they're going to roll their eyes. They're going to go like, oh my gosh, not that big of a deal. And to have to present it as this is huge, just as Adam shared, because it is. And when I unpacked all of it for her, I mean, I hope it resonated, and she's a young adult now, so of course at the time you kind of feel like,
I'm sure you crushed it, Veronica.
I don't know. I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to have a Q&A session at the end, and I'm sure this will spark some questions. We're going to allow about 10 minutes at the end. I'll give a prompt for that, and you're just going to communicate your questions in the chat box there, and I will get them and then head them off to Adam. Okay, so on to the next subject. What are some common tactics abusers use when using technology to either intimidate, to stalk, and most definitely using harm?
Yeah, so in answering this question, it really helps to understand why victims of intimate partner violence and domestic violence and dating violence are at such high risk of technology-enabled abuse. And it's because the truth of the matter is the tactics abusers are taking when they're engaging in technology-enabled abuse are not expert level tactics. We're not talking about cybersecurity experts that are engaging in this behavior, information security experts, or technology experts. They're able to engage in these behaviors because they have access to the victim's devices and accounts, and they have the victim's trust, and they know personal information about them to reset passwords and things like that. So when in answering this question, I would say one of the most common tactics is unauthorized account or device access. Because going back to what I said before about sort of the nexus of our universe being in our phones and how we use it for everything, if somebody has access to our phone, we have more personal information on our phones than we do in our homes, right? So it's sort of if you're an abusive individual and you have access to a victim's device, or better yet, the victim in a relationship is logging into their accounts on the abusive party's device and saving their password when they do it, that's like giving somebody the keys and leaving the front door open, right? And so that people that want to engage in these behaviors or exert power and control or impersonate the victim or make changes to their accounts or engage in economic abuse by going into their PayPal or their Venmo or their online banking accounts. They're like a kid in a candy store. You can lock a victim out of their accounts, you can monitor them, you can do all these different things. So, and I want to be very deliberate. I'm not talking about hacking, okay? A lot of people, I used to go into restraining order hearings all the time, and when tech-enabled abuse was alleged, the victim would often say, well, I'd hear in other cases, they hacked my Instagram or they hacked my Gmail. And hacking, that is a term of art that can mean different things to different people, and you have to be really careful whether you're talking to a victim or you're talking to law enforcement or officials at a school or a judge. When you say hacking, that person may walk away with a different understanding of what happened and may assume that the perpetrator has some type of tech savvy or tech skills to be able to do that, when in fact most of the cases I work on, the overwhelming majority of cases that I work on, there's no hacking. In fact, hackers would be offended if I said, well, I hacked my ex-girlfriend's Instagram because she logged in on my phone once and never logged out. It's like, come on, dude. Like, that's not hacking, right? But that's the kind of access that hackers are leveraging their expertise to get. And people in abusive intimate partner violence relationships have that access, but they don't have to work for it. So I would say unauthorized. So that's why I use unauthorized account or device access and not hacking, because when you say that term, it's universally understood. There's no confusion there.
And then how about stalking? Are there apps how do you even know if you are being stalked with the partner using technology?
Yeah, so cyber stalking. So first of all, I'm so glad you brought that up. I think we all have heard of stalking and cyber stalking before, but when I ask people to define what cyber stalking or stalking is, people will give me examples of it, but they can't give me a definition. And so I think it's really important that we understand that cyber stalking or stalking, it doesn't really matter. Stalking is a pattern of abusive behavior, a pattern of behavior directed at an individual that would cause a reasonable person to feel fear, right? That's what it is. So a pattern, so you need at least 2 incidents directed at one person, so it can't be to multiple people, that will cause a reasonable person to feel fear. So if you have, an act of image-based abuse or revenge porn, and you have somebody threatening somebody online, those may be individual crimes, but that's also cyber stalking, or that's also stalking. And so if we're talking about stalking in the forms of monitoring somebody's location or tracking their location, which I think that's where a lot of people go when they throw that term around, that our phones are designed to track us, right? So if I have access to your iCloud account or your Google account, I can go in and say, lost my iPhone, and I can ping exactly where you are. Or if you use the Maps feature on Google, if you set it up to, if I have access to your Gmail, I can just access your maps, but it also can keep a recorded history of everywhere you go. In addition, you've got things like low-tech stuff like family sharing and Find My iPhone, family sharing or Find My Friends. Again, this is not evil technology, right? But it's misused to harm folks. And again, I worked on a case where we couldn't figure out how the person was finding where the victim was going. And it turned out that they had given themselves administrative privileges to her Gmail calendar, her Google Calendar. We had turned her location tracking off. We did all these different things. And I think that also goes to the point that we have these massive digital footprints. We have all these different accounts. And again, if somebody has unauthorized access to our devices, then it's very easy for them to hide their abusive behavior in different places where a victim may not recognize it, because this abuse is generally invisible. And there's not, unless you know what to look for, the signs may go completely unnoticed.
Yeah. I know, I think Snapchat still has it as well, where you could double click on your contacts and it pops up your friends list with the map, and it pinpoints if they have their location device on.
Yep.
It pinpoints where they're at that moment. You can just keep zooming in to get to that particular friend, and you can find out exactly where they're at. And if it happens to be a location with a name like a Target store or a particular school, it will actually say it under their name as their that exact location.
Yep. Yeah. I always encourage folks to turn all that stuff off. When they added that feature, the victim serving organizational world freaked out a bit, but you typically have to affirmatively turn that on. And so luckily it's not operating in the background without a victim's notice. Usually they've got to turn that on. So that's actually an example of where there was some ethical and moral thought put into that, because usually technology is set up to expose our privacy to the max, and then we need to go in and reduce how much. It should be the other way. It should be maximum privacy, and then we can throttle back on that as we see fit. But unfortunately, it's usually the other way, because data brokers and information, it's an economic goldmine for a lot of those platforms, so they like to have it on.
Agreed. Okay, can you walk us through an example of something that might be commonly overlooked on our electronic devices?
Yeah, so I used to go to court all the time, and this used to drive me nuts, where a judge would say, someone would say they got into my account, they got into my social media account, or they got into my email account, they hacked my account, whatever. And what I would often hear from a judge is, well, how do I know it's them? And that is just the bane of my existence, right? Because it's very difficult it's very easy to create, log into somebody's account secretly. It's very difficult to prove that they did, short of getting law enforcement involved and getting subpoenas to internet service providers. That being said, if somebody ever comes to, if you're ever worried, let's take Instagram for an example. And in fact, everybody, if everybody that's on, let's do a quick little exercise, okay? So everybody go ahead and pull your phones out, and we're gonna do a little exercise that if somebody says, I think someone's hacked my Instagram account, there's actually a way we can verify if that's true or not, and actually obtain evidence from the Instagram account to use to show law enforcement or a school or a judge. And so go ahead and open your Instagram account, if you're with me so far, and hit the bottom right-hand corner, which is a little circle with your profile photo on it. Go ahead and tap that, and that'll take you to your profile page. Once there, hit the 3 horizontal lines in the upper right-hand corner, which will bring up a menu. Go ahead and tap Settings at the top. And once you're in the Settings menu, go ahead and tap Security, sort of down near the middle there. And finally, hit Login Activity, the second one down under Password. What you'll see is every device that's logged into your account or was recently logged into your account will show up here. Now, it's not going to say who it is, but if you see a device, so I've worked on cases where it's a device that matches the party to be restrained in a restraining order hearing, it matches the city that they live in, and the date they logged in is when the alleged incident occurred. Now, that's, to me, really powerful evidence that you can use to show that, yes, somebody did. Now, it's not a smoking gun evidence or catching somebody red-handed, but it's about the little things. We seldom have perfect evidence in any case, but if we can start being tech savvy, and that's not an expert level thing that we can do. That's just going, and this is true for like Google, same thing. You can see what devices are logged into your account. So we can see who, sort of like who's been sleeping in my bed. You can see who's in there. It just takes you being comfortable navigating the settings a little bit, because these platforms collect all the data.
Now, I have a Gmail account, and when I use another device to log into my Gmail, it does send me an email that says that, do you authorize, or just an alert actually, which seems like a great safety measure. But as I was asking that, the person who's on my account can immediately delete that email.
Yeah, so that's two-factor authentication or two-step verification, right, where even if somebody has your password, if they try to log into your account from another device, Google or Amazon or whoever's going to say, hey, Veronica, we see you're logging in from a new device. We're going to text you a code or email you a code, and go ahead and enter it, and then we'll mark this device as safe. Well, that's normally a very powerful form of security, except with intimate partner violence, because as you mentioned, one, somebody can go in and block those emails or delete those emails, or they can go in and adjust the contact information so that those notifications aren't even going to the victim. Or most commonly, if the victim logs into their accounts on the abusive party's devices, then those devices are now considered safe by Amazon and Google, and they're not even going to send you a notification because they're going to recognize that this device. So again, I'm in a relationship, my partner uses my laptop to log into Amazon, we break up, I'm an abusive person, I go, well, I wonder where she lives now. I go to Amazon, I type in her email address, boom, password auto-populates or autofills, I log in, no alarm bells go off because they recognize my laptop because she used to log in from it, and now I can see everything that she's doing. And that's really the loophole that exists for, Amazon and Google, they spend billions of dollars on their security systems, and they can be out, there's a domestic violence perpetrators can blow a big hole through those defenses, unfortunately.
Now, you gave us an Instagram kind of field trip, as it were, virtually. How about the other one? So can you do kind of those same things? Just go into security of Facebook, Twitter. I'm sorry, I don't even use social media because it scares the snot out of me. But if those people that have social media can you also do kind of that same tracking system? Sure. Go to profile, go to security and logins, and they would be able to see if somebody logged into those particular social media accounts?
Yeah, you just go say, how do I see who's logged into my Gmail account? Just type that in and that'll take you to Google's frequently asked questions or even a guide that Google provides. Google's very good at giving step-by-step guides on how to check things. So yeah, Facebook, which owns Instagram, but Amazon, Gmail, Apple, you can see not only see what devices are logged in, but you can also see what devices are considered trusted devices, meaning they won't get prompted for that code if you enter the right password. And all those accounts will give you an option to remove that trusted device. So part of the tech savvy safety planning training that I do is when we're working with victims, immediately tell them to go in and revoke the trusted label on their ex-partner's devices so that they can't continue to log into the accounts.
Okay, so we outlined a lot of potential ways that dating partners, and youth can be harmed using technology. So what are ways we can best protect ourselves, and how can we relay this information to our friends and family as well? How can they best protect themselves?
Yeah, I mean, because friends and, these are sort of, I can give you some very sort of global suggestions on how to be safe, and then they also are equally applicable to victims of intimate partner violence or teen dating violence. Okay, this is going to seem like an obvious one, and I get this, but passwords, okay? The average person has 90 online accounts and 80 apps on their phone. And I thought that was crazy. It was like, there's no way I have 80 apps on my phone. And I absolutely have 80 apps on my phone. I have more than 80 apps on my phone. I probably use 8 of them, but I have a lot of apps on my phone. And we open accounts all the time, right? So we're creating new accounts with passwords all the time. So if the average person has 170 accounts, that's 170 passwords that we're needing to enter. I don't know anybody that can memorize 170 unique passwords. So as a result, we don't practice very good password hygiene, and we reuse passwords. Or when you're logging into a new site, it'll often say, log in with Google or log in with Facebook. It's convenient, which it is, but it also means if somebody has your Google password or has logged into your Google account, that means not only can they log into that account, but they can access all the other third-party websites that you used Google to log into. So I'm sure a lot of us on this webinar have reused passwords before, and no judgment, I used to do it too, but I use a unique password across every account that I have now. And this is good whether my partner is trying to harm me or a stranger is trying to harm me. I use it's called a password manager, and it's an app on my phone, and it is also a plugin on my web browser that's like a password vault, and it creates really unbreakable passwords for all my accounts, and I just have to remember one password to get into the vault, and it autofills them through an encrypted channel. I use LastPass. It's a free password manager. You can also, 1Password is also a great one. All cybersecurity experts, anybody in tech safety will recommend you immediately start using a password manager, because even if you think you're safe, this is another thing. If you're curious to see how safe your passwords really are, you can go to a website called Have I Been Pwned, Pwned. So it's like Have I Been Owned, but instead of an O, it's a P. Go to haveibeenpwned.com and enter your email address, and it'll tell you every data breach that email address has been associated with.
Oh, shit.
And that means email, address, phone number, passwords, all these things are now out there. And if you use those passwords across current apps and current accounts, then that means, you know, the bad guys can get access to those. So that's it. And that's a great way to sort of take control, because we just, oh, I need to open an account to get this free offer or get this, you know, ride share once or something like that. And then we forget about it. We don't terminate those accounts. But there's valuable information in those accounts that we often forget even exists. So going through it, so it's a bit laborious because you've got to go through all your accounts and start updating them, but it's really worth it. It takes some time.
That was LastPass?
LastPass.
LastPass.
Correct. LastPass, or the number one and then password. 1Password is also a great password manager. And and then, you know, you'll even see, like, your iPhone has its keychain and it'll autofill passwords and save passwords for you and offer to create passwords for you as well. I don't want to give Apple or Google that control over my passwords, but it's perfect. You know, that's an individual choice and people can absolutely do that too.
Okay, that's actually a question I have for you. So when our computers prompt us, would you, and it's usually Google, if that's the search engine, would you like me to save this account? Login for you? Or when you put in a credit card number, would you like us to save this on your secured account or whatever? That's my reaction every time. It just terrifies me. But I guess you just answered my question. Is that safe?
Well, safe is a relative term. You know, it's meant to be convenient, right? It's supposed to be convenient, but I don't do that. But a lot of folks do. And again, if you're making an informed choice and you understand the risks, then great. You know, I just get concerned when that stuff starts autofilling. If somebody gets on my device or gets in my accounts and it just autofills my payment information and everything else, I don't want to make it easy for somebody who's trying to harm me. And really, internet attackers or bad actors, they're looking for low-hanging fruit. They're looking for people who are using easy passwords to break that they use across multiple sites. So if you're using a password manager and it's creating alpha, 25 character alphanumeric passwords, they're going to pass you by most likely and go for somebody else.
Okay, I'm sorry for this LastPass, because this is such good information. Did you say this is an app, or is this just .com and then?
Well, yeah, you can go to LastPass.com. Just Google LastPass, and it's a free app for your phone.
And then it's a free app. Okay, is that's the password vault that you just?
Yeah, they call them password managers.
Okay, and that's safe to have on your phone. Or are you recommending to have that on a computer? Where do you recommend?
Well, you can do it on both. So you can download what's called a browser plugin. If you use Chrome or Safari or whatever, you can download a LastPass plugin, and it'll, whenever you go to a website, LastPass will offer to autofill the password through an encrypted channel for you. And it'll say, so like when I go to a website on my phone to sign in, it says use LastPass, and I say yes, and then it does a face scan of me, and then it logs me in, and that's how that works. And it uses a really powerful password to do that. So again, the one unintended consequence here, I will say, for victims of intimate partner violence that are using a password manager is if their master password is compromised by their partner, then they have access to all their passwords. So there's no I guess that to tie a bow on this question, it's always important. There's no perfect solution, right? It's not about eliminating risk. It's about mitigating risk. There's no way we can make sure that we or the victims that we're working with are going to be 100% safe. It's all about making them safer if we can.
Yeah.
I'll mention one other little thing. This is just one other little tidbit that I figured out the other day is if you're working with, one of the challenges that I've always had, or I used to have with victims when we would take photos of their injuries, is where do they store them safely? Do they send them to a friend? Do they keep them on their device? If they get back in the relationship, which we know is very common, does that create an unsafe situation for them? Does it get deleted by that person when they're back in the relationship? So a little tech savvy thing that we can do is if you take a photo of an injury of a victim, or they take it, if it's on their phone themselves, tell them to go in to the photo, click edit, zoom in on, it can zoom way in so it looks like it's a picture that was taken by accident, that looks like it was taken in your pocket. Or you can zoom in on, if there's a sky background, you can make it look like it's a picture of the sky, whatever you need to do, and then save it. And now when you're looking through somebody's phone, that doesn't look like a photo of an injury. That looks like a photo that somebody took by accident in their pocket, or of a sunset or whatever was in the background. And then if you need to access that photo again, you just click edit, revert to original, and hit revert to original, and you'll have the photo of the injury right there. So that's just like a little, we should be, those of us working with victims and survivors should be comfortable leveraging the technology in our survivors' pockets to help make them safer. And that's just one example of ways we can do that.
That's awesome. Is there any other thing that you want to give us, a little nugget? Because those are all so powerful. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I do a whole tech savvy safety planning course. There's all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I mean, you don't need to rely on me. I mean, we all are tech savvy. We all use our phones all day long. So being able to do these things, I mean, I just stumbled upon that because my mind is open to how we can use our technology to empower survivors. And that's how I came across that one.
Sure. Okay, so probably time for one more questions before I open this up. What are some gaps in knowledge or services when it comes to addressing digital abuse and domestic violence? What are you seeing out there?
It's not great. The reason I started EndTAB, which stands for, as you mentioned, Ending Technology Enabled Abuse, we're a training organization. And one of the reasons I started it, one, is because I felt like our sister organizations and nonprofits that were working with victims of domestic violence, sexual violence, human trafficking, elder abuse, stalking, what have you, they didn't have access to the right training or resources to be effective when abuse goes digital. And unfortunately, law enforcement is really let's take law enforcement, for example. They're very under-resourced to deal with cybercrime.
Yeah.
And it's not just online domestic violence or tech-enabled domestic violence. We're talking about financial crime and ransomware attacks and, on financial institutions. And so, those high dollar crimes tend to get prioritized over, online gender-based violence. And so, or they get referred to the FBI. Because the FBI is actually an organization that can help with that, but they're inundated with these as well. So unfortunately, my experience, and again, I'm not bashing law enforcement, it's just the state of affairs. They haven't been properly funded or resourced in this area, is that reporting online abuse to law enforcement probably isn't going to go anywhere. And it's going to have to get really bad before it does. When you see cybercrime or cyber stalking, let's say, cases in the news, I guarantee you it's gone on for at least several months, if you read that, and the abuse is horrific and it's a sort of an online abuse campaign. So it's got to get pretty bad before the right resources. If it's just, a couple of incidents, in my experience, and the same with judges. Judges have a really hard time with this, which is why I showed you that Instagram trick, because I'm so tired of, folks that have the power to protect victims and hold perpetrators of online abuse accountable, are really putting an unrealistic burden on victims by saying, well, prove to me that this person did this. Well, really, I think those institutions should be saying, well, have you checked your login settings for your Instagram account? Where was this guy? I want to see this guy's, an internet service report from the respondent, not just saying, well, how do I know it's him? So unfortunately, our legal institutions, I would say on the criminal side for, when those cases do get charged by law enforcement, our DAs are pretty tech savvy, district attorney's offices are pretty tech savvy for dealing with this kind of stuff, but it's challenging. And then finally, I'll say that the tech platforms are really tough to deal with because, if you get harassed or abused on Facebook by somebody to be your ex-partner who's created a bunch of fake accounts and you report that to Facebook can ignore you. Facebook cannot take them down, and you can suffer emotional harm. You can suffer reputational harm. You can, self-harm. And if that happens, you can't sue Facebook for not taking them down because Facebook has no liability for what people do on their platforms, much like it's under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. You can't sue any platform for what people do to each other on those platforms. So I'm not trying to paint a bleak picture, but our traditional institutions, whether they be tech platforms, law enforcement, or judicial system, haven't always been the best resources for victims of tech-enabled abuse. And that's really why I do what I do, because I want victim serving organizations, legal advocates, victim advocates, preventionists, social workers, therapists to be, let's do some tech savvy safety planning right now so this doesn't happen. The best thing we can do, as you know, is prevention is just the best thing we can do. And that holds true for tech enabled abuse as well. So I'm a big believer on the prevention side of saying, the prevention education partner at Laura's House is a nationally recognized, like, world-class organization because they do such an amazing job. And I would argue, so if I'm stealing from this, from PES, I would say that when you're talking about the elements of a healthy relationship, you've got trust and honesty, one, you've got respect, two, and then historically we've said physical and emotional safety. I would add digital safety to that as well.
Sure.
And that's I'm going to button that answer up with that little shout out to the PES department.
We'll take it. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and open this up, and we've got so many, so we'll just get to as many as we can, and maybe you've already answered this, so you can just do this briefly. How can you check to see who else or what other email has access to your Gmail account? So is there a quick way you can?
Yeah. So if you're in Gmail, so I mean, it's not there. Look, there's no perfect solution, but if you want to see if somebody else has been logging into your Gmail account, okay, if you are in your Gmail and you go to the very bottom right-hand corner where it says details, click details, and that'll show you the last 10 logins into your Gmail account, and we'll show you, we'll show you different information about who logged in and from where. It's not always perfect. It might look a little garbled, but I find that may not be best for identifying somebody's logged in, but it is really helpful to know, okay, I haven't logged into my Gmail in 3 days and there have been 5 logins. That is a great way to at least verify whether somebody's accessing your Gmail account without your knowledge. The other thing you can do is go into the trusted devices section of your Google account and see what other devices are trusted, because if they're logging in, then they have to be trusted devices. So those are 2 places I would recommend looking.
Okay, awesome. Okay, someone says that they have a youth that is engaging via the internet with men and boys she does not know, and the parent wants to protect the child. Is there a program you would recommend that the parents can put on the phone or computer to keep the youth safe?
Okay, so there's a platform out now. I don't generally. I would encourage you to review, any parent to review any kind of parental control software, parental monitoring software. But there's one called Bark, B-A-R-K, like a dog bark. It's a I'm interested in this platform because it balances safety with privacy. So what it does is it uses artificial intelligence and algorithms to sort of constantly monitor a child's basically 30 different platforms, whether it's social media, email, texting, direct messaging, all these different things. And what it's doing is it's looking for markers that would indicate suicide, sexual content, abuse, cyberbullying. And only when it comes across those will it alert the parent. The parent cannot access their child's accounts. They will only get alerts when these things come up. So but that's a pretty interesting one to me, and I think worth taking a look at.
Yeah, it's awesome. Hence the title Bark. That's
Bark.
really cool.
Yep.
Okay, and then this is on a personal note, Adam. They want to know if you partner with schools or go into school districts to share the tech prevention to the students. So do you have any educational programs that you go into schools with?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, it's all virtual these days, so I'm not going into
Sure.
schools, but I've generally, my programs are designed for people who work with victims and work with youth. That said, I've had this request enough where I have started to do presentations to youth, where I have to adapt the presentation because obviously you don't want to give people wanting to cause harm ideas on how to engage in abusive tech-enabled behavior.
Right.
But you know, I taught one of the things I center on is look, the UN declared that access to technology and access to the internet is a human right. And I think I've had made some headway with talking with teens about, look, this is a human right. You know, like human rights are a big deal. And if
Mhm.
someone's preventing you from accessing the internet or accessing technology safely, then that's a human rights violation. And we need to be talking about that because you deserve, you know, as teens or as young folks or whatever, you know, I'm very careful about what I call them, but you know, that you absolutely, that's an inalienable human right. And now, granted, the UN was more looking at countries denying their populations access to the internet, but I think it's equally applicable to intimate partner violence and unhealthy relationships as well. So yeah, so that's a long-winded answer to saying yes, I do that stuff.
Okay. And then before we log out, would you mind putting your contact information in the chat box? And then what I would encourage everyone is the chat box actually does go away. So when he puts it up there, feel free just to get your smartphone out now that we have those out for a little study on Instagram. Take a picture. You can take a picture of the chat box, and then that way you can get a hold of him and his organization. He can give you some contact information.
There's my email. It's easy. It's adam@endtab.org. And endtab.org is my website.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Adam, for doing that.
Sure.
And then really quick, when you talked about deepfake, at least it was part of the opening, I don't think everyone knows what that is.
Ah,
So can you
okay.
briefly, and we've just got about 4 minutes, but briefly describe what is deepfake? And then also, is it easy to get your hands on that technology to be able to do that? And are there legal repercussions associated with this? So a lot in a very
Yeah.
short period of
This is okay. I'm going to distill my 2-hour deepfake training into 1 minute. So deepfakes use artificial intelligence to swap somebody's face from a photo onto somebody's body in a video, thereby making it look like the victim from the photo is actually participating in the video. The way this manifests is targeting women via pornography. 98% of all deepfakes are pornographic, 100% of those target women. So what we're seeing is this non-consensual deepfake pornography, where even though a victim didn't participate in a sex act on video or on tape or being filmed engaging in a sex act, you can now manufacture these things and then disseminate them, and they look authentic. Um, Legislation and laws do not track well with technology. So I would say, yes, there's some deepfake laws out there. California has 2 of them, really aren't helpful to victims, in my opinion. There's only 4 in the United States. 2 of them are in California. One focuses on elections and the other one focuses on civil lawsuits. So not really helpful to you know, marginalized communities and the working poor and folks that at least I'm used to dealing with. So you have to shoehorn existing laws like you know, false impersonation or defamation or something like that. But yeah, deepfakes are becoming a huge issue, and the technology is becoming more and more accessible to make them.
Okay, so you just said it was becoming a larger issue. Is this something that you're coming across in your practice, or did you come across with some of the clients that you were helping? Were they victims of this? How prolific is this that you're seeing, or are we still on the kind of?
Yeah, we're still on the increase. I mean, there's hundreds. You know, there's I think these in the last year or 2, they've been deepfake pornography's been viewed like over 200 million times or something like that. So it's what started with targeting celebrities is now targeting private individuals. And again, we're getting to the point. There are deepfake apps out there where you can take a picture of yourself and put yourself into a video, a music video, mainstream music video, or TV show or movie. And we're just one pivot away from somebody. And I've already seen some of these apps created on the dark web, where instead of mainstream movies, it's pornography. And once we get to that point, that's where we reach the tipping point, which we're going to see in our schools, where kids are making non-consensual pornography, deepfake pornography of each other all the time. And I don't want our institutions to be blindsided by this. So the reason I work, and I have worked with victims of deepfake pornography before, the reason it's not because I was working with them and they brought it up. They came to me because they know that I am really the only person that is focused on the actual problem, which deepfakes it's violence against women.
Right, absolutely.
Everybody else is worried about fake news in the elections, but that's not even an issue. It's violence against women. But as usual, and this just makes my blood boil, that violence against women is an issue that is routinely subverted in favor of other issues, like male politicians or the celebrities or the news media or something like that. So, we need to do a much better job of that, which is, I'm sort of shouting it from the rooftops, but
well, thank you.
Very few are listening.
And I do want to, there was just a question, and yes, he is saying deep fake. So,
yes, deep fake. Google deep fake and you will see what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and that ends this hour. It went by so fast. Adam, you are amazing as always. You brought a wealth of information that I know. I'm going to be looking into some of those password protectors that you were talking about, because guilty as charged on never changing a password, so has to change. But thank you for your time. Thank you everyone for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks where we continue this community education series, and his information's on the chat box, like I said, so just take a picture. And then until next time, Adam, you take care, and the rest of you, we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye for now.
Thanks everybody.